Good evening and welcome to Inside Government, a show brought to you by Q Community College, here for the fall 2024. You'd like it to be spring 2025, but we'll get to that in a second. Fall 2024 semester here at the college. This is a show that's on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, as well as ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access, and Win 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. We are delighted to have in the studio with us the city manager for the city of Auburn, Jeff Dygert, who is joining us. And since the last time he was here, two things have occurred that are major news. One is the city passed a budget that he had proposed. He was here just before the budget went out to council to vote on and to review. And also during that time period, he also announced that he was retiring. And he will be leaving city service after June 30th in 2025. That's why I made the reference to spring. And we've asked him to come on to talk about both of those items, as well as water quality, take a couple of your questions, and also talk about some capital projects that the city is working on. Welcome back, and congratulations on your news.
Well, thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So how did it come about? When did you decide it was time to retire?
Well, that was, I have a contract that goes through June 30th of 2025. That puts me in that city manager's position for 9 years, and that's a lot.
Well, I think we've talked about this in the past. You are most likely the second longest city manager. Bruce Clifford was there for a really yes. long time, like Bruce Clifford, but you are the longest city manager in the city's history.
Aside from
second one.
Yes.
So 9 years was enough?
I think 9 years is enough, but I also think, I feel strongly about organizations having turnover too. And I remember having that conversation with folks I worked with at the fire department when I was there. I think it's healthy for an organization to have turnover and see new energy, different perspectives on things, and give people within the organization an opportunity to move up and take on new roles.
Which is all
personally,
of the above
I think
here.
It's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Right.
So when did you make a final decision?
That happened last year. I mean, I knew what my plan was, so it was just a matter of communicating it with council and the public.
And you gave them roughly a year's notice for this?
Yeah, probably a little bit more than that.
And
because I also think that it's important to have a good transitional plan and a handoff rather than a cold start to whoever might come into that position.
Right, and at that point you did not know, but we'll get to that in a second.
Correct.
So your last day is July. Well, you'll be there until roughly July 1st or June 30th. What do you plan to do after that? Have you got a plan for after that?
No.
Are you taking another job? You're going to go fishing?
We'll see what happens.
But you're open to things?
Sure.
How long were you with the city overall by the time you get done?
So by the time I get done, I'll be in my 31st year.
Okay. So let's talk about transition. You were, when you were hired, what could be considered an internal candidate. You
Correct.
Moved up from chief to city manager. Did you recommend to the city council, the mayor was here maybe a month ago, one of the first shows, maybe earlier in the month, and one of the things he left here, then he went to council and talked about what he had talked to here about, which was how do we do the search? Did you recommend looking at the organization from within first, or did you make any recommendations?
My recommendation, not specifically to individuals, but my recommendation was, and I don't think it was necessary, but my recommendation was that the city look within. And again, I think the pros of that approach are that we have a number of staff who know the organization, they know how it works, they know, technically how it works, they know the community, they have a network already established. That was one thing that I realized when I came into this position 8-ish years ago. It was amazing to me how, with respect for people that have come and gone throughout the years, it's really hard to grasp how somebody can come in from outside of the community, set up shop to run an operation like the city, and have to establish all of those relationships with all the different people in the community and try to figure out who's who can get things done, who can't get things done, and all
And did
that.
you make that case to council behind closed doors? Did you sit in on any of those discussions?
As far as my replacement goes, no, I did not sit in on those
Okay.
discussions. But generally speaking, those are the things I think are really important. And it's hard for me to comprehend at times how people can come into a community and get up to speed. So the way life works, the way that business works, there's not time to get up to speed. You've got to hit the ground running. And I think it's not always in the best interest of an operation like that to have that lag time while somebody tries to figure out what's going on, right?
Well, they're not, because last week they picked Jennifer Haines, who
Right.
I think mostly has about 3 years seniority on you city service-wise.
Yep.
She joined the city in 1992, 93. She's the Director of Planning and Economic Development, and she's been in that role for, let's say, a dozen years or so. Thoughts on that decision by council first?
I think it's a great decision. I don't think you'd find too many folks on city staff or in the city organization that would have anything negative to say about Jenny. She's experienced. She's very well known in the community and the region even. So I think at this point in time, it's a very good decision. Her focus has been on economic development and planning, so the planning part's good. Economic development is good, especially as we look at what's going on in Central New York right now. So the timing, right? A lot of times it's the right person in the right place for a particular job, and
So
she definitely has
originally,
all that.
in the budget that you proposed, there was a 6-month period where there was going to be an assistant city manager. That was whether you were picking an internal candidate or an external candidate, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So internally, she is going to become assistant city manager on January 1st, I'm assuming?
Yes, yep.
And we'll do that for 6 months. So what will her portfolio be during that time period?
We're going to try to work on an orderly transition of information and initiatives and things like that. And we're already working on that stuff. This allows us the opportunity, right, because she'll vacate a very important position in the organization. This gives us an opportunity to work on filling that position ahead of time so that we can actually make changes and have them take effect and not have gaps in service.
Well, let's talk about that domino, because when you move internally, that does create a domino, just like it did at the fire department when you ascended to the city manager's position. Is it your expectation to name somebody to the director of economic, if it's still called that? I know you may deal with that issue, but planning and economic development before January 1st or in the first 6 months of 2025?
My goal is to identify who that person's going to be to take over that role so that they can hit the ground running on or about January 1st.
And you currently do have an assistant director, Steve Selvik, who is so is he a prime candidate?
Correct.
For that position?
I would hope so, yes.
Do you know if City Council looked at other individuals besides Jenny Haines?
I do not know.
Okay.
Like I said,
We're not going to give a preview to the mayor, who will be here in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But we'll ask him that question too.
Right.
So obviously you're looking at the director of planning. You've put in the assistant city manager. Do you see any other top management positions coming up before you leave in June?
No.
And if
Oh, you got me thinking. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think so.
well, the question would be on that: if they are those appointments you make, or would they be appointments that Jenny Haines make,
I
or
think
are they in
those would
conjunction?
be. I think a lot of things moving forward are going to be in consultation with, right? So to definitely get Jenny's input on things, consider that input. To me, it would be foolish to do things that in the future, whether it's a policy decision or whatever.
You don't want to tie her hands on things.
Right, to set something up and then have her feel that she's got to undo something. It's not good for the organization. It makes no sense.
So we'll talk about the current budget that just passed, but before we get to that, let's talk about the next budget that's coming up. I'm assuming she will help develop that in conjunction with you and your comptroller,
Yes.
Mary Beth Leeson.
Yes.
And that will be most likely in spring, late April.
Well, I just came from a meeting talking about that when I came here.
Okay, so what's the outlook budget-wise?
I think everybody, whether we're talking private sector, public sector, budgets are tough right now, right? The cost of doing business has gone up all across the board for everything, whether we go to the grocery store or
Blacktop.
or everything that we do has seen a significant increase. So we're working really hard to try to figure out how do we deal with that efficiently.
So obviously there's a lot riding on next Tuesday. We're taping on the week before Election Day, and this may show on that day as well. But obviously the markets will be impacted. But budget-wise, what's the outlook from Albany when it comes to aid to the city?
That's a big question, right? So last year, New York State, after many, many years of stagnant aid to municipalities, decided to put in what they termed even, and they emphasized a temporary increase in AIM funding for municipalities.
And AIM stand is aid to municipalities?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the push now, I think, for all municipalities in New York State has to be to establish that as either the new standard and get it so that it becomes more permanent, and potentially increase it. It was appreciated last year, but in the overall view of everything that we do as a municipality, we could definitely use more help from the state.
But this year was an election year, not to be cynical at all.
Right.
But traditionally, we've seen jumps in aid to municipalities, local governments. Doesn't have to be cities or
Right.
school. It can be cities, school districts, towns, villages, when there's competitive elections up, which is this year. And then we see a decrease sometimes, or at least not the increase, the rate of increase from
Right.
before.
What we
following
really
year.
need the state to do is take a look at what the real operating costs of municipalities are and the services that are provided. They did that over the last couple of years with school districts, trying to adjust those reimbursement rates and things to a level that made sense and helped school districts operate appropriately. Municipalities are continuing to provide more and more service. And sometimes I feel like we're providing service that maybe we shouldn't be providing. Maybe it shouldn't be on us. Maybe it should be state level service or county level service, but it comes down to us to provide some of those
plowing
services.
the arterial, which is a state route.
Right. So we've done that for years without any increase in compensation until very, very recently.
This is the perfect time of year where we hear the following statement: we just have to do more with less. Is that doable as a city manager?
I think within certain parameters, yes, but right, we have.
Give me the parameter.
We got to
See, I
consider.
disagree. So I will tell you, I disagree with that theory.
Quality of life issues, right? So I mean, if we get down to where things are really tight, the first things that tend to go are our quality of life issues. I know at some point, we'll probably talk about, what do we do around the holidays, or what do we do at the parks, what do we do for summer events and things like that. Those are typically the first things to go. But the vast majority of our budget is our people that provide the work. And
But if the people aren't there,
right, then
But
we
you don't
can't
feel-
get the
you
work
can't do
done.
the
And
work.
we can't pick up the trash on time, and we can't get to the water main break as quick, or we can't take care of this, that, or the other thing. I mean, right across the board, whether it be our public safety services or our utility services.
So let's talk about the current budget, which was passed after you were here on last time. Can you give us just in general, it doesn't have to be very specific, what were some of the general highlights? Was it a maintenance of effort budget? What kind of
Pretty
budget?
much, yeah. It's been, so the prior year, we tried to hold the line on most things, and our department heads do a fantastic job keeping their budgets in line and controlling costs. And trying to do everything we can. We try to maintain like our fleet and things like that, so that we've got good, reliable equipment to work with. But the last few years, we've kind of cut back on some of those purchases.
But at some point, you're going to have to replace them because they're
Right,
going to age.
it's sometime the
It's the
bill
old
comes due.
Meineke theory. You're going to pay me now, or Monroe, I can't remember which muffler place. You're going to pay me now, or you're going to pay me later.
Right, right.
Was there any new initiatives in the budget in hindsight that you said, well, okay, we need to start doing this, other than, obviously, there was a plan for succession?
Right, right. We've kind of held the line on like positions and things like that. You know, through the last few years since I've been there, we have added a few positions here and there. The code enforcement office, we tried our neighborhood initiative and the cleanup crew and some things like that. DPW through the years had been really cut back on, and we tried to bolster DPW a little bit and, you know, get some more folks in the parks and things like that.
And this was, if I remember correctly, passed unanimously.
Yes.
And that's the first unanimous budget in many moons.
Yeah, I don't keep track of
Okay,
that.
all right, I do. All right. So, did the tax rate go up at all? You had a tax increase with this?
See, I didn't know you were going to ask me all those questions, and I can't remember. Honestly, it's from one day to the next.
But you were under the mandatory tax cap.
Oh, yeah,
There was
yeah.
an increase, but you did not
Yeah.
go over the tax cap.
Right.
But one question, because we all received our water and sewer bills recently. Thank you for those quarterly beautiful
Reminders.
Well, they're not reminders. They are, you will pay.
Yeah, wow.
Water and sewer rates did go up. Why was that? Especially as you're retiring bonds from the 94, 95 upgrades, which are now aging out.
Right.
after
So
30.
obviously, like everything else, the cost of doing business just goes up. Those bonds from the mid to late 1990s for the wastewater treatment plant are coming off. But again, we have this major new project going on at the wastewater treatment plant to get us into compliance with the new standards that are out there, and to help us avoid other costs. So things that have happened over the last few years, some of the regulations have changed. We ship out sludge material from the wastewater treatment plant. The cost of that has escalated, and it's projected to be well over $1 million a year in the future. This new plant will help us actually take care of that product internally, so we'll avoid all of that cost, and it will help keep us in compliance. So we have a roughly $90 million project going on.
So I was going to say,
at the
this is
water
about
treatment
a third more than the one in the early 90s, mid 90s was about 62 million. This is about 92, 93 million.
It's in that ballpark, yes.
So is most of that paid for by fees that will be generated by water
So
and sewer
there's
users?
grant funding, there's some no interest loans. So, you know, it's being offset, not totally covered by grants, but it is being offset significantly by grants. Without those grants, then we would have had significant rate increases.
And you had just finished the slow sand filter up
Just finished a little
just
while ago.
finished. So we're talking about wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
When does that get completed?
We're probably talking 26.
26. So has it started yet?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's well underway, but it's a massive project.
And going back to just water quality at this stage, basic question: is Auburn's water safe to drink?
It is safe to drink through the unflappable efforts of our folks in our water department, the county health department. Everybody works together on that, and yes, the water is safe to drink. Are we concerned about water quality in Owasco Lake? Absolutely. Are we trying to come up with alternatives? Yes. Are we trying to work with folks to come up with plans to help improve the quality of the water in the lake rather than treat the water in the lake? Absolutely. That has to be something that we're focused on as collectively as a community.
And Dr. Adam Effler will be here next Tuesday to talk a little bit about that, but I do want to go into some. So there has been some testing, and I don't know if I'm using the right term, so if I'm not, please correct me. There's some neurotoxins that had spiked in numbers, but not to the point of where you said, go buy bottled water at Costco and Wegmans.
Correct. So what happens typically during harmful algal bloom season is the water gets tested twice a week typically. Can happen more frequently if necessary, but typically twice a week. They test just the raw water coming into the water filtration plant, and then they test the water that has gone through the filtration plant.
And is this Seth Jensen and his team?
John West.
Okay,
Yep.
so they do that here locally. So
They take the samples, and the samples get shipped off, and they're analyzed by a third party.
Okay.
And then we get the results back.
And then have those numbers of those neurotoxins dropped now?
Yes. So for the last 2 weeks, this will be the third week. If those results typically come back on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we anticipate those results to come back what is referred to as non-detect, both raw water and finished water. If that happens for a period of time, another couple of weeks, we'll normally start to roll things back, and we'll stop testing and then start testing again next season.
Oh, so during the winter you don't necessarily test because it's colder and the algal
Correct.
blooms are gone?
Right. So after we get a period of time, normally around 4 weeks or so, where it's been non-detect, and the weather conditions look like they're favorable to keep things at bay, then we go without.
So you're back to 2 days a week now, where maybe initially 3 weeks ago you were doing more than.
We had an initial. We had one point in time where there was a number, where there was a very, very minor detection of something in the finished water. It was thought that was just some sort of a, for lack of a better term, like a glitch in the testing or something like that. So there was some more testing done just to make sure, more testing done immediately. The same water samples that had been used the day that the detection happened, when they were retested, did not show that. New samples did not show anything. So we don't know exactly what happened, but we think may have been some sort of a glitch in the testing. So County Health Department issued some warnings, informational warnings, do not drink orders, because they didn't, the issue even at that point didn't rise to that level, but in an abundance of caution, sent out some notices.
So unless something terrible happens with a pipeline or something of that nature, you're out of that worry for right now, because you'll be gone before the blooms usually come at the end of July.
Yeah,
and
well,
August.
personally, yes.
You'll be out of it. But if there was a no drinking order, what happens then? What
There's
does
an
the
entire
city-
plan around that, and that is really that's under the authority and the direction of the County Health Department. So there are plans for that include, guidance, communication to the community, guidance for community members, specific guidance to certain types of industries, right? And then emergency plans to distribute water to folks that need it.
Where are you on the Lake Avenue Bridge at this stage?
Lake Avenue Bridge is still an active project. It's currently stalled out a little bit because, like many other things, over the course, especially in the time period that it was identified as a project, and then it went out to initial engineering, and then it went out to bid. During that time frame, in the initial planning stage, an estimate's given by engineers to say this is how much we think this will cost. By the time it made its way through the process, the estimates came back significantly more than what we had anticipated.
So what's your number now?
There's a funding gap. It's around $9 million. So there's roughly a $2 million funding gap that we're trying to close.
So when you were at $7 million, who was going to pay for most of that?
Well, a lot of it gets covered under different state bridge programs, and so that's one of the issues.
Is the bridge safe?
The bridge is safe. So the New York State Department of Transportation comes in, they inspect bridges on a regular basis.
And they usually gave an A through F rating?
When they have problems, they flag them, like red flag, yellow flag, whatever, There were areas of concern with the bridge that they wanted addressed that gets it eligible for state funding. So we're working on, again, we start moving the project forward, and they anticipate that it's going to take some time to get those projects completed. So we're working on all of that. You know, right now the state has allocated X amount of funding to that project. We've gone back to the state to say, hey, you know, we need to fill this gap.
So when you say fill the gap, as a percentage increase based on what they would do, and then the city would come up with the rest?
Right. Right.
How much is the city going to roughly come up with?
Well, that's the issue right now. We're working back and forth with the state and with different.
No, but when you were at $7 million, were you paying 1/7? Were you paying 10%?
I'd have to go back and look at it because each bridge project is slightly different. Like we have the Aurelius Ave Bridge project, another one that's moving along. We had to go back to New York State for some other funding with that. Same type of thing happened. The last few years, the cost of construction and materials escalates so quickly that by the time we move through the process, by the time we get to the final bidding, prices tend to be significantly different.
And on that particular project, we had a viewer question because they may not have known that the project had stalled, and this may be the answer to that. You had City Crews crack sealing on there. You do that on a lot of different properties.
It's a vendor.
Yeah. But you did that because?
Well, you know, we don't want something to deteriorate further, right? So if we can keep.
But you didn't do it because you were going to be shutting the bridge down in 2 more months.
No.
It's because you're not shutting the bridge down in 2 more months.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You were here some time ago, and you mentioned Hoops Park and the wall around there,
Yes.
And draining the pond. Is that still a plan?
That's still a plan. We may see some action on that this winter. So the phones will be ringing off the hook, I'm sure, when work starts there because
Why would you get calls? Because there's no water, no ice skating, what?
Because there's a mess, right?
Okay.
You got to break a few eggs sometimes.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that people will be very concerned when they see their beloved Hoops Park with some heavy machinery in there getting things cleaned up.
So explain but you explained this a couple times ago, so
Sure.
Please, if you don't mind reiterating, this has to deal with the outer wall of the pond.
Yeah, the major part of the project is the outer wall of the pond. If you look at it, is deteriorating. Some of it's broken, cracked, tipping in, and things like that. So we were able to get some state funding to help with that project. And when the project starts, they'll actually also dredge out Hoops Pond a little bit. It tends to get.
We'll be very interested to see what you find.
Well, yeah.
When was do you have any idea when the last time that was done?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I think it was probably about 20 years ago, if not longer. So there's a lot of
So
sediment.
likely Jimmy Hoff is not there.
Well, you never know.
You never know.
You never know. But because of the way the water flows into and out of the pond, there's a section of the pond that tends to build up a lot of sediment. So that'll get cleaned out. And
So to a certain degree, it will not only be messy, but it will be smelly.
it very likely could be.
And how long do you think that will take?
They're hoping to get the work done so that by next summer season, things are buttoned up. So that's the hope.
And does the city have to come up with some of the money on that?
There's a little bit of operational money, but there's about, I think it was $200,000 state money going towards that project.
And you think it'll be under $1 million to do this project?
I hope so, yeah.
Okay. Last questions, and this is a viewer question because they see this has to deal with the county office building. Not that that's your problem, but there are cones in front of all the parking spots in front of the county office building.
It's funny you just mentioned that.
So the question is that city property or is that county property?
That is city property, and it's amazing that you just mentioned that because I was noticing that as I just drove by it literally this afternoon. I was thinking, well, they were put up there initially for safety reasons because there was potential for debris to come off
But
the
you
roof.
need parking downtown.
Right. So that's a great question, and the timeliness is actually incredible. One thing that I did notice as I went by today is there is still work being done on the roof, so I need to follow up on that and find out when they're done with that roof, because essentially they're trying to, at one point, create a safe area around there for the work to be done. But yes, that was my thoughts exactly, is that we have roughly a dozen spots there that
I want to get the viewer questions in there, and that came up as their question was.
Somebody was inside my head.
I don't think they were really thinking this, but this is what they wrote to me was, well, isn't that lost revenue for the city? Not that I think people are always concerned about lost revenue like that.
Right.
Our guest has been the city manager for the city of Auburn, Jeff Dygert, who has made an announcement in the last 7 months that he will be retiring at the end of next year, the next fiscal year for the city. And we hope he'll come back in the spring. You may even want to bring your assistant city manager.
That sounds like a good plan.
I know in the past you've brought in your comptroller, Mary Beth Leeson, to talk about the city budget. We'd love to have you back on in the spring when we return.
All right, sounds great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We will be back in just a moment with Beyond the Front Page with former United States Congressman James T. Walsh and the Finger Lakes Land Trust President Andrew Zepp, who will talk about the work of the Finger Lakes Land Trust, which includes a lot of property within Cuyahoga County and Skaneateles, including taking 101 acres as a project in the last month. And then we'll talk to them about that. We'll be off this Thursday for Halloween as the college tapes the play of Harlequin performance in the theater here at the Bisgrove. But next week we'll have the Executive Director of the Owasco Lake Watershed Council, Dr. Adam Meffler, in on Tuesday, and Cuyahoga County Legislative Chair Aileen McNabb Coleman will be here on Thursday for a county update on the 7th. In the coming weeks, we will have the Mayor of the City of Auburn, Jimmy Giannantino, City Councilor Terry Cuddy on water issues, Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Misty Slavic, and Cuyahoga County Public Health Director Kathleen Cuddy will be in once alone to talk about one project, and then her staff will be here as well to talk about another for our final show of the season. If you'd like to send us your ideas for questions or guests, you can send them to cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. Thank you for watching. Stick around for Beyond the Front Page, but otherwise have a great Halloween, and we will see you back here in the studio on Election Day.